What's good, everybody? It's your boy YouTube, and we're back with another video. We are back. It's been a few days, been a little bit of time. Sometimes, we just got to figure out what we want to talk about. I don't want to get on here and talk just to talk. But after some games from this past weekend, the question came to my head: which team is the most dangerous when it comes to UConn? Like, which team? I don't want to say should they fear. Which team is the biggest threat to UConn today, as we speak? And we're going to get into that. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Let's get into it. So, obviously, UConn, 18-0 right now. They have relatively blown out every team they played. The closest game would be the Michigan game. But they've blown out Ohio State. They've blown out Notre Dame. Most recently, Iowa, Louisville. Relatively Louisville. Like they had a sizable lead. They let them come back a little bit, but they've looked super dominant in all of the big games that they have on their schedule. They still have Tennessee on their schedule, so we'll see how they do with that. Challenging with that matchup with their athleticism and speed and the way that they play and run up and down. We'll see how they do, because they did lose to them last year, and that's kind of what started their run to the national championship last year. So I'm curious to see how they go into that game. But I mean, there's a ton you can say about UConn. UConn has been by far the best team in the country this year in terms of efficiency, the defense, the offense, everything that they've been able, everything that they've wanted to do, they've been able to do. Turnovers have hurt them in some cases, but if they don't turn the ball over, they're extremely hard to stop, because they're going to find a way to get open looks. They're going to find a way to get good shots, and they have a lot of shot makers on their team. Not only tough shot makers, but open shot makers, and that's just as important. Having players that can knock down open shots is super important. And two of their best players are players that can do that, or their two best players are players that can do that. So they've got a lot, but there are some teams that also have a lot that on any given day could knock them off, could beat them in a matchup in March. I think a lot of these teams, or some of these teams, bring different things, and there's a different way for them to attack UConn, not necessarily attack in terms of offense, but in terms of game plan. For me, I'll just go down the list. I would start with South Carolina. I think they're probably the biggest threat, just because they've been in this moment before. They've been in these situations. They've got depth. They've got great defense. They also have the ability to score. I will say that the three-point shot is still hit or miss. There are games where it's on, there's games where it's off. And against UConn, and this is going to be set for every team, your three-point shot is going to have to either be there, or your defense is going to have to be so elite that their three-point shot is there and it's negated. That's going to be hard to do. But if I'm South Carolina, I'm looking at matchups. I'm looking at the ability to get up and run up and down, the ability to defend at a high level, the ability to rebound, use their size. I think that gives them an advantage. I think for most teams, it's just going to be what can you do offensively, or how can you slow them down so that if you're not able to score 80 to 90 points, not saying that UConn's going to score 80 to 90 points on all these teams, but if they are capable of, or if they are in that kind of rhythm, can you keep up with it? Is really the thing for some of these teams. Now, a team like UCLA, I think theirs would be more defense rather than it would be offense. I think they are fully capable of scoring 80 to 90 points in the game, but are they capable of getting the stops that they would need to stay in that game is the question for them, in terms of their defense. Their offense is kind of similar to UConn. Obviously, there's more movement and things with UConn, but the amount of open shots, the amount of efficient shooters that they have is kind of similar to UConn in terms of the high-powered offense. South Carolina and Texas are more similar in elite defense, figuring out things that work in their favor offensively, and then using that to their advantage. But sometimes when you match up against teams that also do that, it gets kind of clunky. It looks kind of bad. Their game this past weekend, offensively, it was nasty. Just going to be honest, that's not a shot at either team or any of the players. It just, the defenses, it was hard to tell what was elite defense and what was bad offense and what was bad decision making. Struggling that often to get the ball in, and getting 5-second violations, it was crazy to me. I just feel at a certain point you have to draw. At a certain point, it's on the coaches. Obviously you want the players to be able to make those plays without you having to tell them, but at a certain point it's on the coaches to be able to look and be like, okay, this is what they're trying to do. This is how, this is the kind of, this is what we're going to have to do just to get the ball in. And then once you get the ball in, it's basketball. You just figure it out. But that was something that was just jarring. If they struggle with it that bad, granted, those are elite defenses, but if they struggle with it that bad, if UConn is willing to do that and doesn't struggle with it, which they have struggled with it in the past, so they could, but if they are one to do that and not struggle, it could get ugly. Texas is similar to South Carolina. I think South Carolina has more weapons offensively. When you look at Tanaya Latson, you look at Tessa Johnson, you look at Joyce Edwards, even Okot, Agat McKeer, Ayla McDowell, even Raven Johnson when she's aggressive. They have more options and they have more players that you have to worry about offensively than I feel Texas does. Now, granted, Aaliyah Crump is back, so that adds another piece to them. And I do think Aaliyah Crump being on the court with Jordan Lee, Roy Harmon, and Madison Booker changes their offense completely because it's another shot maker, not only a shot maker, but also a good three-point shooter, a player that can dribble, drive, and get to the rim, and is capable of making any shot near the rim. So that for sure will help them in a matchup with UConn. And I would have loved to have seen her play in this most recent game against South Carolina. Obviously, South Carolina and Texas are split 1-1 at the moment. Texas did beat UCLA and South Carolina early in the season. Vanderbilt has beat LSU. LSU beat Texas. So it's kind of, jumbled up in that 2-7 range, and a lot of people got on me because I moved Texas down to 10. Probably moved them down too far. I still think they should have been moved down a little bit further. I don't think they should have been ranked 4th. I dropped them to 5 after they lost to LSU. Which maybe I shouldn't have dropped them that low. Maybe they should have dropped to 4. But I feel like you have to give Vanderbilt their credit for being undefeated and beating an LSU team that Texas just lost to. If you get the way that I think about it is, if LSU lost to Vanderbilt but beat Texas, Vanderbilt should be ahead of Texas if Texas lost, and Texas lost twice. So but I do understand that they beat South Carolina and they beat UCLA early in the season, so you give them the credit for that, but you have to give Vanderbilt the credit for beating an LSU team that Texas could not. So that's my thing on that. I do think Texas probably should be around the 6 from 6 to 8. I'm not going to say the number in between that, but from 6 to 8, because I do feel like Michigan is a really good team. I do think, now granted, Michigan and Vanderbilt just played on Monday, and it came down to the last shot. So that's just how big, or that's how small of a gap there is between Team 5 and Team number 7 in terms of rankings. And that's why I asked which team is the biggest threat, because there's a lot of teams around it, but you don't know. It's hard to say for sure, this is the best team outside of UConn, or this team gives UConn the biggest problems. Vanderbilt, obviously their problems come between, figuring out who guards Michaela Blakes and keeping her under wraps, and that's easier said than done. They've got good players around her this year with Justin Passat, Aubrey Galvin. Finding players that can take onus and take some pressure off of her offensively is huge. Their defense has been really good, and they're able to get up and down. They shoot threes. They shoot the 3 ball well. So there's a lot of different things that I would love to see. Now, I just saw about 15 minutes ago that UConn and Vanderbilt are going to start playing a 1-1, a home and home. So they'll play home here, then they'll play at UConn 1 year, then Vandy 1 year. Didn't say how long the series is for, but I would love to see them do that while Michaela Blakes is still there. I think I said it was 2027, so she would still be there. But I do think they would add a different look to them. They just played Hannah Hidalgo, and I don't think Michaela Blakes and Hannah Hidalgo are the same, and they're definitely not in the same in terms of what Michaela Blakes has with her versus what Hannah has. But they were able to slow her down in the second half, where I think she had 10 points in the second quarter, and then I think she scored 2 or 3 points in the second half completely. So I will say they do a better job of stopping players that have just one, teams that have just one player that is a initiator of everything. So I will be curious to see how they do with that. LSU, I think LSU could potentially give them their biggest problem because they have so many guards that can score and put so much pressure on the defense. When you have Jada Rashard, you have Flau'jae Johnson, you have Michaela Williams, you have Malaysia Wiley, you have all those different players that can be played at the same time. How many players can UConn put out there to keep up with those players for as long as they would need to is the question. Now, granted, UConn can use some of that against them and play a little bit bigger with Blanca, Sarah Williams. Maybe Jana's back by then. I don't know exactly what her injury is, but I would say for LSU, like their offense would be their best defense. Now, granted, I think they're capable of getting stops. I don't think they're a bad defense, but I think if they were to match up with UConn, they would be more worried about their offense versus UConn's defense than their defense against UConn's offense. Michigan, we already seen this matchup, but I would love to see it again if they were to play in March. I think Michigan adds a different challenge because they have the players that they have that are, their top two players are super versatile players, and they play kind of like 1 through 4. Like, they don't really have a position, so it's hard to try to figure out what exactly the team is doing from a play-to-play basis. And sometimes that hurts Michigan, sometimes that helps Michigan. But I do think seeing what Silas Swords was able to do, if Olivia Olson is able to have a better game than she had in the first matchup, it could get very interesting. I would say those are probably the 5. 2 to 3 weeks ago, I would have had Oklahoma in the conversation. I just don't know about their defense. Their defense has to be better. Like, they're a great offensive team. They have been for the last 4 to 5 years with Jenny Baranchek. But the defense has always been what slowed them down in big games and in pressure tournament moments and things like that. It's just if you can score 80 to 90 points, obviously that's great. But if you can't stop the other team and you're not shooting the ball at your normal clip, it's hard. It's hard to win those games, and it's hard to be in those games. So I want to see what they do over the next couple of months, or next couple of weeks. They don't have that long before the tournament, but over the next couple of weeks, see how they adjust. Vanderbilt plays South Carolina in Columbia this weekend, so that's a big game. So that'll answer some questions as well about if Vanderbilt is one of the top 5 teams, top 6 teams in the country. If South Carolina has, figured out exactly what works best for this team specifically. UCLA had a really good win over Maryland this past weekend, so they feel really good, and they look really good as well. I think Lauren Betts is playing better and better, and I think Gianna Neepkins is super, super underrated still. Like, to this, I still think that people just don't understand how good of a basketball player she is, and I think once you get to the tournament, she can win you. I don't want to say just one game. I think she can win you multiple games with how efficient and how good she can be on the offensive end. But again, for UCLA, it comes down to defense. For Texas, it comes down to the half-court offense. But with having Aaliyah Crump come back, I think that helps them a lot because Jordan Lee was able to get some shots off of pin downs and things like that. So I'll be curious to see how they're able to flow better, if they're able to flow better with Aaliyah Crump being out there and they still have Ashton Joe coming back. Sorry about that. Yes, Texas half-court offense, the big key for them. Vanderbilt, how consistent can the players outside of Michaela Blakes be? How good is the defense? We'll see more. We'll have more answers about that Sunday. LSU, the guard play. How consistent and how efficient will they be in the potential matchup? And then Michigan, can Olivia Olson match what Silas Swords was able to bring the first matchup, whether or not AZ Flood is on one of those players? Granted, all that is easier said than done. I'm not saying that this is the only way to beat them or this is what you need to do or if you do this, you'll win. This is just my thought process on which team is the most dangerous when it comes to playing a UConn. I think South Carolina and Texas are 1 and 2 in terms, if I were to rank the biggest threats to them, I would say South Carolina is 1, Texas 2. I would think UCLA would be 3. And then it's probably a tie for 4 between Vanderbilt and LSU. I would probably give the edge to LSU because they've had players that have made deep tournament runs versus Vanderbilt who hasn't. And I may put Michigan over top of Vanderbilt. I don't know for sure. Maybe over the coming weeks I'll know more or I'll have a better thought process about who I have after South Carolina, Texas, and UCLA. I'll probably put LSU ahead of Vanderbilt for now, and then see what Vanderbilt and Michigan do over the next couple of weeks, because Michigan does have a matchup with UCLA coming up. So we'll see how that goes. But I appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. Comment down below what you think, what teams you think are the most dangerous, or what team do you think is the most dangerous compared to, or if they were to match up with UConn in March. And yeah, let me know how you guys feel about this season so far. Let me know how you guys feel about the content that I've been dropping. And I appreciate you guys for watching.